Hi everyone, Chillax here and welcome back to another Anchor Panic video. So this is going to be an update on my previous Entropy Cataclysm video in which I share with you the scores that I obtained from the 5 teams that I showcased to you guys in the previous video, and then how I look for an extra 3 mil points in order to secure a very nice rank for Entropy Cataclysm. And it's so interesting because I want to say, like, of the 4 major changes that I made, 3 of them I thought would be downgrades and 1 of them I thought wouldn't make much of a difference, but they all turned out to make big differences. So hopefully you guys get something from this video. So without further ado, let's begin. So just to provide some context here, the teams that I showed you previously got me 28 mil. So I was 2 mil shy of obtaining the final row of rewards, which give you 3,000 pure light dust crystals along with, some other stuff. And for this reason, I thought, okay, is there any way that I can get an extra 2 mil? Which is not easy to do. But I managed to do it and perhaps surpass it, so that I became not only one of the 5 people to cross the 30 mil point threshold, but I did leapfrog from rank 6 to rank 3. And we still have 2 days left to go, so we'll see if I can maintain it. But even if I don't, I'm like really satisfied with what I did. So let's get right to the before and after. So beginning with the Mono Quantum team. As you can see before you, my lineup is exactly the same as previous. I still run Double Breakers, Newcastle, and Ifrit to provide quantum damage buff to neighboring allies, as well as an energy burst buff to neighboring allies. Then you have the Adrenaline Stacker Strain, the attack buffer Turn, and of course your damage dealer Tia. Now the one change that I made here was a Sigil change, which Strain was originally on, actually it wasn't this Sigil, it was like another healer Sigil, but I ended up swapping it to Luxuriant Origin. I think this was originally suggested by Kwa-sensei, so shout out to you, my man. But I didn't understand why until I ran it, and I was like, oh wow, huge damage boost. How is this possible? Well, first of all, keep in mind that the adrenaline buffs that Strain applies to her allies scale off of her attack. So having an extra 16.2% base attack is already great. But why Luxuriant Origin in particular? It's because if you read the Sigil effect, there is a 60% chance to increase her attack by 10% at base. When using normal attack and energy skills up to 2 stacks, the effect resets after the action. So you can get up to an extra 20% attack from this potentially if you RNG well, on top of the 16.2% base attack. So I end up with some wild swings in my RNG depending on how it goes. So just to show you the before and after. Before, as you can see here, my Tia was scoring about 1 mil points, Newcastle 500k, Ifrit 450k, and this combined for 2.1 mil on average. But most of the time, I would say like 80% of the time I was scoring about 2 mil, and maybe like 5% of the time I was scoring 2.2 mil, but that's the best I could do. But then when I swapped over to the Luxuriant Origin Sigil, this is actually a low roll, guys, or like a low RNG, because I ended up having a low roll of like 2.4 mil, and on occasion I would get like 2.6 mil. So huge jump, right? That's almost like a 600k boost potentially to my overall damage from my quantum team. So that was the first change that I made. Now the second change that I made was a minor change, but to paint a picture here, my lineup once again for the Mono Lightning team was the same. You have triple DPS, a breaker, and a damage buffer. But I want to show you first the damage calcs because it made me realize which operator to focus on. So as you can see here, I noticed that my Abyss Elysia was scoring way more than my other operators. So, you know, Abyss Elysia was 1.3 mil, Alice was 800k, Karnessa 500k, Ling 266k. This was one of my higher damage dealing teams. I would score anywhere between 3 mil to 3.3 mil. But on average, I was scoring about 3 mil. And as you can see, I even scored below that when I captured the screenshot. But then I was like, okay, well, if Abyss Elysia is doing that much damage, maybe I should focus on her, right? Because whatever improvement I make on her will probably have the highest rate of return. So I made one minor change, which I didn't think would do much besides fix my RNG, but it made a world of a difference, which is to find an extra 6.8% crit rate. Now, some of you guys would typically do this via remodeling, which I could have certainly done, but the problem was that my crit rate was already almost maxed out, 10 out of 10, and I was out of empowers materials. So the next thing I did was I looked at the Stellaron. I was originally stuck on here. I had recently gotten the speed bonus, which actually did nothing for PvP because my Abyss Elysia was still too slow in PvP. But yeah, and then I kind of stopped to work on other units. But then I realized, oh, okay, there's an extra 7.6% crit rate. I might as well just get that, at least cross the 30 mil combined damage threshold, right? So what I did was I just grabbed this node from the cash out of the pure light crystals on. I basically bought as many lightning bottles as I could, and I had just enough to secure this node with like 2 bottles to spare. And it ended up skyrocketing my average and even gave me new highs. And this is the screenshot I'm referring to. So this, I would say, is like one of the higher rolls I get. My min after that Stellaron node activation was around 3.35 mil. But then sometimes I would get like 3.5 mil or even 3.6 mil after that activation of that crit rate. So I was really surprised. I basically jumped from 1.3 mil to 1.8 mil damage from my Abyss Elysia, and my Alice approaches around like 900k damage on average. Yeah, so this isn't the highest I'm capable of, but that's essentially the difference, as you can see before you. Okay, and the third team was my Mono Ice team. This was the lineup that I showed you guys in the previous video that ran double DPS Dawn and Ukali, along with a Breaker Abyssal and a Pseudo Breaker / Freezer Lang Jiao. And then you have Jade as a healer and attack buffer. And as you can see here, my Ukali scores typically about 700k, Abyssal 250k, Lang Jiao 200k, Dawn 200k. Now, what's really surprising when I saw this score sheet is how low my Dawn scored, given that she has her signature Sigil, even though she doesn't have Ascensions, but she's basically 10-10-10 on her skills, and on the optimal level 40 optimal model sets with optimal remodels to some extent. I was expecting Dawn to score at least 300k, if not 400k, but she ended up scoring a measly 200k, which kind of shocked me. And this was when I went with Kwa Sensei's advice to swap Dawn out for, drumroll please, Core. Yes, guys, Core. This cutie right here, who's not even an SR operator, is a Giga Chad in disguise as a maid. So how does Core boost my score so much? And I'll show you the score in a moment. Well, the secret sauce is this final ability right here, in which she applies on, with her energy burst, a 50% chance application of Frostbite, which is a debuff that when the target takes ice damage, they have a 60% chance to increase the damage taken by 25%, and this debuff lasts for 2 turns. And it's very easy to get her Ascension 6, which gives her an additional frostbite trigger chance of 8%. So this is essentially a 58% chance of activation, which is more than 50-50. Yeah, so, and then in terms of model set, I would have her on Strain's model set, which is 4-piece Raging Wave, 2-piece attack boost. Now, she doesn't really need the attack. It was more just for the Raging Wave 4-piece buff, which buffs attack and defense for your party. But anyways, what ends up happening is with that change, I get a huge boost in my damage output. This is actually a low roll. So previously with the Dawn setup, I had 1.4 mil on average. Actually, that was the high. Usually it's like 1.2. But with this, on a low roll, I get 1.7, and on a high roll, I can get up to 1.9, although I low rolled for this run. Yeah, so how does this occur? Well, if she's able to apply the Frostbite stack on rounds 2, 4, and 6, I mean, you're basically getting like 25% extra damage on all your damage from all your damage dealers, right? So Ukali's damage jumps from 750k to 1 mil, and then Abyssal and Lang Jiao, they end up doing decent damage. And what's crazy is that my core, I don't even have her talents maxed out yet, and she ended up doing the same damage as Dawn, almost identical. Actually more in this screenshot, and she's also providing so many damage buffs to the allies. And I think part of this reason is because core is an additional breaker, which is great, right? Because when the tenacity gauge of the enemy is broken, you do more damage. So this makes a lot of sense. Okay, so moving on to the next team here, we have another lineup change. Hold on, I went too fast. So this was the before. So before I did the whale route where I went like, I jammed all the SSRs and ran it, and I was happy. I got 1.2 mil, which is not the best, but it was tied with my ice team at the time, so I was like, okay, this actually exceeds my expectations. Rose turns out to be the main damage dealer thanks to her heavy investment, and then my Raven, she's on her signature Sigil, and then my Yen, she's not on a signature Sigil but has Ascensions. Yeah, and then Flicker and Centauria. So as you can see, they don't really do a whole lot of damage. 500k, 300k, 270k-ish. That's kind of the ballpark. But what I did was, okay, why did I run Flicker in the first place? The reason I ran Flicker is because my Centauria's heals are terrible. And so I was thinking, is there a way to buff my damage output without compromising my defenses? Because if my Centauria goes down, say like on round 5 or 4, then that's not good. Well, the solution, drum roll, was Dayling. Yes, Dayling. So this I learned from the Cian Bros. You know, I knew for a long time that Dayling was ranked very high in PvE, but I didn't understand why, because it's just basically attack buffs, right? Well, the thing is, when you have her Ascension 6, which I do, you get an extra stack of Order. And what is Order from her talent 1? Order, basically, she provides 2 different buffs, an offensive buff of 5% extra attack, or a defense buff of an extra 10% defense. And you can have, they last for 2 turns, and you can stack 2 of each. And thanks to her Ascensions, you get an extra Order stack, max, so you can stack up to 3 times. And when your ally acts, they automatically gets command. And it's a translation thing, I double checked. Command and Order are the exact same keyword, just different name. So yeah, basically you can get 15% extra attack and 30% extra defense. And if you have her on the Luxuriant Origin, I mean, this gets kind of crazy, not necessarily with her talent 1, but with her skill, because apparently her skill also provides an attack buff to anyone within a 3x3 grid. And then additional impact on same element operators, notably Centauria, who's in the middle right next to Daling. So the thing about the Sigil itself, Luxuriant Origin, is that once you use the additional attack Sigil bonus effect, it will reset. But what ends up happening is your Daling casts the skill, gets the attack boost while casting the skill, and then the buff goes away, but the buff was slingshotted onto Centauria, so that when Centauria acts, Centauria's skill, which increases everyone's attack based off of her attack, it's also benefiting from the attack buff from that effect, you know. And anyways, I'm not going to explain slingshotting much more. If you've played other gacha games, you know what I'm talking about. But you're essentially stacking attack buff on top of attack buff, attack buff, attack buff, and just everybody gets a ton of attack buffs. So that's the idea. What ends up happening is that this was the before with Flicker, and this was the after. And this is considered a low roll. Actually, I can get as high as 1.6 mil with this, but it's already a significant boost, right? Because 1.2 was the original high roll, but with this, on average, I'm getting about 1.48, 1.5 something. And as you can see, it's not a huge damage boost for my operators like Rose, Raven, or Yen, but I mean, each operator is essentially getting an extra 75k to 100k damage boost, which, you know, per operator. So you eventually get a sizable damage boost that's fairly consistent. So yeah, that was very surprising, because I thought, you know, Daling wouldn't do that much, but as it turns out, she does. Okay, and the final team was the Fire comp, and this one really disappointed me, and I think it is beyond saving at this point, because the thing about Fire operators is that a lot of them who buff allies have very strict positional requirements, but on top of that, the buffs aren't that significant. I think Kwa Sensei mentioned this on Discord yesterday, shortly before I did this run, and my jaw dropped by how awful my score was. So this was the first time that I ran this team, and I was thinking, oh man, 600k, that's so low. None of my operators scored more than 200k, and I was thinking, man, this is terrible, you know? So I went ahead and leveled up a couple of my skills more and whatnot, leveled up my sigils, you know, showed a little love to my operators, and this was the result. I ended up scoring worse by leveling up my skills and my sigils. So yeah, and this is really sad, because if you look at my other teams, with some degree of investment, even with some really gutsy roster changes and sigil changes, I was scoring at least 100, 200k higher, but here I couldn't even score the same. So yeah, it's beyond saving at this point. I think that for the next 2 weeks, as I prepare for the next phase of Entropy Cataclysm, I'll probably experiment with nature to see if I can get a better score. Because, yeah, my Dwalin's built, my Dawn's built, my Catalpa maybe a semi-built. I know that we have nature operators coming our way, and there's plenty of quantum units to go around, so I'm sure I can think of something. But anyways, wanted to share that tragedy to you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was informative. If you haven't already, please drop a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care.